All right, a notice here. Last time I meant to mention this. There's a video I want you to watch. It's a whole 10 minutes long, so it won't be too much of an imposition for you. It's actually part of a huge series. Boolean Logic and Logic Gates Crash Course in Computer Science number 3. I'd recommend watching the first two, and then if you like all three, then just keep plowing through them. They're kind of fun to watch, entertaining.
Is actually possible to
It's got this gal explaining
we can eat
the history of computers. It's not programming so much, just ideas, like underlying it all. What does an AND look like? AND gates from an electrical engineering viewpoint. Or the logic table, the truth table for, based on the same idea. You might enjoy it. I hope so. Like I said, it's 10 minutes long. So go ahead and watch it, and then there's an associated quiz, and the only thing in the quiz, I believe, is, questions saying, yeah, I watched it, and maybe something like, did I get something from it? Yeah, I can judge, whether people thought it was a good idea based on that. And homework 3, that grade program is a little too simple, and if you've taken other programming courses, I'm sure you've written it many, many times. So tacked on something onto it. So what I thought would be, it would be neat if we could ask what day it is, like 30, it's August 30, and it would tell us that today is Thursday. And so here's a little bit of a formula that would help figure that out. And it's worth double checking to make sure that I got it right. Today is 30. So 30 plus 1 is 31. What's 31 mod 7? 7 goes into 31 4 times the remainder of 3. So whatever the result of that calculation was, we can come down here and see that 3, yes, today is in fact a Thursday. Now obviously this formula doesn't work for every month, right? Because not every 30th is a Thursday. It could be any of the other days of the week. If that were the case, we would need to modify this value here. November has a different value. December has a different value. And it'd be
holidays are off by 1 under this month because Wednesday 30, 27 has a remainder of 2.
Right. So, if today was Friday, 3 plus 1 is 4. Mod 7 is still 4. So if we look it up, then that 3 would have been a Friday. And so this plus 1 just shifts it over so that the months line up exactly so that a Monday is 0. If we hadn't have done the plus 1, then maybe we could have made it so that Sunday, that 0 was a Sunday and so on. Anyways, so if we were going to rewrite the program, we would need to modify it so that every month had a different value for that. We could probably write a great big if statement that would do that. It still wouldn't be valid for other years. You can see that it's kind of a problem figuring this out on a year-by-year basis, but simplest case is just figuring it out for this month. Unfortunately, by the time you write this program, it's probably going to be next month, right? If that's the case, you might play with changing that value so it's valid for September. Figure out what that value is going to have to be. You could just do trial and error, right? Well, if 1 didn't work, did 2 work? Did 3 work? Rather than trying to figure out the mathematical way. I think Daniel's already spotted it. But, trying to figure out which one, just go ahead and do it, trial and error. And if you don't do that, that's okay too. If you implement the logic exactly as given, that's cool. So I hope that's a little bit more entertaining than just a mere grade program. Any questions over that one? Alrighty.
What do you mean by properly commented?
Good question. I did not put up an example of properly commented. what I would like to see in a properly commented piece of code, let me just pop open Netbeans and, just make one in Notepad. Up at the top of the program, I'd like for you to put, name, the class name, some kind of date, either the date you were turning it in or, the date you started writing it or whatever, and then an explanation of the program. Just writing, homework 3, that's kind of a lame explanation of the program. Homework 3 converts Celsius to Fahrenheit and vice versa. That would be a better explanation. Then, if you have class X, Y, Z, and inside it you have void main. See if I get this right or not. Probably not. See, I should have this memorized and I should make y'all do it. But anyways, like that, right? And then say you declare some variables. Explain what the variables are, right? If you're going to say the day of the week, if you call it day of week or day of month, if you call it something as simple as day of month, document it. And then int day of week or string weekday, something like that. This is just a pure swing. String week WD, weekday, and so on. If you need some intermediate value, in order to figure this out, I don't know what you would call it, I'm picking really horrible variable names. And in a good program, your variable names are kind of a self-documentation. But it doesn't hurt to get in the habit of documenting your variables, Holds the result of day a week conversion, right? Okay. And then, kind of like this. Input, or ask user for input. And then we do some stuff with the scanner. Blah, 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 blah. You'd probably declare your scanner up here. Scanner in equals new, blah, blah, blah. Documenting that's kind of silly, but reads user input. Because you can use scanners for other purposes. Okay, I'm almost doing too much here. But ask a user for input, convert day of month to conversion values. That's a stupid term for it. And then, x equals blah, blah, blah. And then display output. In general, what I would like is for if statements to be documented. Document what an if statement is, just with a single line of code before it. So document if statements, loops. So if you have something like this, if x is equal to 0, we might explain. X cannot be 0 or an error will occur. Something like that. Why that if statement exists, right? Or if we have a loop. Loop from 1 to x. Just a little bit more documentation than you probably did in your 113 classes, guys. I don't know if your instructors were rigorous on that or not. And it's not like I'm going to give you a 0 if you don't document properly. But I would like y'all to get in the habit of doing a fairly good job of it. Then we might back it off a little bit. I think I've already said documenting every single line of code is quite excessive. That's why, ask user for input. If it takes several steps to get the input, that's okay. You don't need to document every single line. If it takes, 7 statements to convert the day of month to a conversion value, you don't need to document every line. If you have a great big block of if statements for handling the output display, like you probably will, don't got to document every line. Just broadly describe the sections. That makes sense? Okay.
In the
Bless you. Why is it saying I don't have any notes? Well, they're there. Any other questions? Good one, because I meant to upload that as a document. I meant to actually give y'all a finished program. Doesn't mean I can't do that. Hey, well, look at that. I opened the C document again. That cannot be the C document. All right. A lot of this is talking about pseudocode. I don't give you homework from the end of the chapter on this chapter, unlike the upcoming chapters, because it's asking for stuff in pseudocode, and I really don't want to make y'all write in pseudocode. We may blip through this chapter pretty quickly. We know what an if statement is. It's got a condition, and a block of code after the if statement is executed if it's true. So you can have ifs, you can have single alternative ifs, and this. If x is equal to 1, that's a single alternative. After the if can either be one line of code or a block of code. So one line of code or a block of code between braces. That's the syntax that you will need. That's a single alternative if. Dual alternative is if else. If x is equal to 1, do one thing, else do something else. Then you could have chained ifs, also known as an if cascade. That's if, else if, else if, else if. You Python guys called it elif. Well, we actually spell out the whole word, else if. So that's a single alternative. This is a dual alternative. Yeah, okay. And then this is a chained if. We may see that the textbook calls it something else. If x is equal to 1, do one thing. Else if x is equal to 2, do something else. Else do thing 3. Right. And I know we talked about this, or else we wouldn't have been able to do the grade program, or at least talk about it. Flowcharts. Pardon me for skipping flowcharting. Looping with pseudocode. Looping is good stuff. While statements, the most primitive form of loop. Now that's not true. Here would be the most primitive form of loop. If you had some line numbers like this. Line number 10, we don't even really have line numbers, so to speak, but x is equal to 1. 20, print x. 30, x equals x plus 1. 40, if x is less than or equal to 100, go to 20, right? And then 50, print done. Something like that. That would probably be the most primitive form of loop that I can think of. Right, it uses a go-to statement. Most languages no longer even support go-to statements. So Java certainly does not. So delete that one from your brain. Yeah, I could leave it there. Nah, I'm going to delete it. I don't want any other instructor to see that I showed you a go-to statement. So instead, if we were to write that, we would do something like this. X is equal to 1, and then while x is less than or equal to 100, do some stuff. Print x. I think I did my logic wrong there. I think I added one to it before I printed it out on the last one, but you get the idea. And it's not print x, it's system.out.println. And then x equals x plus 1, which you could shorten to x plus plus, or you could shorten to x plus equals 1. That's the Python way, and this is the way that most programmers prefer to do it in non-Python. All right. Common syntax error. People want to put a semicolon there because they're putting semicolons there everywhere else. No, you never put a semicolon if the next thing after it's a brace. And it'd be real obvious if we were following this style, which is known as the K&R style of brace placement. I'm sure there's another term for it, but K&R, Kernighan and Ritchie were the guys who wrote the first textbook on programming in C, and that's how they preferred it. And that's what Netbeans does by default. But anyways, that would be real obvious, right? And you Python guys are going to be real tempted to put some symbol there because you had to do it in Python. Yes, sir.
I have a question about those brackets.
Uh-huh.
So when I was learning Java a while back, they said, and they wanted us to put the brackets right next to the parentheses.
Sure.
And in C++, they automatically put it down at the bottom. Which one is more preferred? Does it really matter where you
No,
put
it doesn't. And you'll have, 40% of the world doing one thing, 40% of the world doing something else, and the other 20% doing some really strange things. If you go into the Netbeans Preferences, you can set which way you want it. And one of the preferences they've got is this. That looks crazy to me, but there are people who do it. Another one is to do this.
So,
And then, like that. This is my favorite way. And then you've been taught in your Java learning in the past to put it here. They're all equally good. I think these are silly, but I'm sure that there's some reason that some people were doing that.
so the code is recognized as long as the bracket is somewhere after the parenthesis, right? Regardless of...
Right. These languages, unlike Python, ignore white space.
Okay.
If I took this code up here,
And put it
I'm
in
going to
simple
copy it and make some changes to it. I'm going to take the comment out, though, when I do it. Oops, I left my little syntax error there. Nothing after the while statement except for parentheses and a brace. Okay, so if I add that, in C or C++ or Java, in C++, the syntax would be a little bit different, but not much. About the only thing you'd need to change would be to change the system.out.println. That's valid code as well. So the white space, which is how you enter the enter key or the tabs or space things over, it pretty much completely ignores. Unlike Python, where it's very specific about you needing tabs in the right places. That make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
It makes more sense when they line up.
It absolutely makes way more sense.
Yeah.
You would not want to do it like this. And, the ghost of programmers past should come over there, and tap you on the shoulder if you wrote this. But
I mean, it's just messy and unorganized.
yeah. So that's fine, or that's fine. I don't care which way you do it. I know that Netbeans defaults to doing it that way. And if you like it that way, that's cool. I think I have too many examples here. Yeah, okay. That's called block style. And I forget what that's called, other than K&R style. I'm sure it has a less namey-based version. So your while, the way it works, is you have your condition, and if that condition is true, it enters the code. If this condition is not true, it skips the code, just like an if statement. So if x was not less than 100, it wouldn't do anything. Maybe that seems obvious. Maybe it doesn't, because there's another kind of loop called a do loop, which does not behave that way. And you didn't have that in Python. So I'm going to go ahead and make a comment about this one by copying and pasting. And I pity the people who might be typing the notes. Alrighty, so this is what's called a Oh man, I can't not believe my brain just froze on this. Pretest loop. Pre meaning that the test occurs first, and only if that test is true does it enter the code. And in all the languages that descend from the C language, unlike Ruby and Python and some other modern languages, you have also post-test loops. A post-test loop is indicated by the word do. So int x is equal to 1, do, the brace there, put our print statement here, system.out.println x equals x plus 1, and keep repeating that while x is less than or equal to 100. It looks like those things do the exact same thing. So this is a do loop. I'll say while loop equals pretest in the notes. And that do loops, or you could call them do while loops, equals post test. Why? Because the test happens at the bottom. These would print out the same exact things. They would print out 1 to 100. So are they identical? No, because what if we changed our starting value? What if this is equal to 101? Would it print anything? No, because it's a pretest. Without this being true, it would not enter the body of the loop. Post-test. If x was equal to 101, is it going to print anything? And the answer is yeah, because there's no while, there's no clause to stop it from going into the body. So pretest loops rule out, post-test loops always execute at least once, no matter what the condition is. Pretest loops, the block may not run if the initial condition is false. And we'll hit that on a future PowerPoint as well, so I'm not going to type that up at this point.
Is there an until? Is there a do until?
There is not in this language. I like the do until syntax. Right, do some stuff until x is equal to 101, right? You know, to get it to print out all the numbers between 1 and 100, or you know, I think that would do it. Yeah, that would do it, but we don't have a do until. The C-based languages like C, C++, C# do not have do until. I don't remember if BASIC does or not. So the loop terminology, the number of loops, the number of times that each time it repeats, that's called an iteration. You may not be able to predict how many times something is going to run. So the number of iterations may be indeterminate, right? If the user is going to enter the value, you know, or it's supposed to loop until a certain condition, but you're not sure when that condition is going to occur, then it's not really, you know, you can't predict in advance. But it's still called one iteration of the loop per time, right? X equals 1, that's an iteration. X equals 2, that's an iteration. It's possible for a loop to repeat forever. That's called an infinite loop. And I swear I'm probably going to type an infinite loop. The easiest way to do it is just to forget to change the value of your loop variable. If I do this, x is equal to 1, while x is less than or equal to 100, print x, and then I run it for y'all, it's going to print 1 a million times until I stop the program, because it's an infinite loop, because nothing ever changed the value of x. There's no way for it to get out of the loop. So it's a loop that never stops. The reason why is the test condition never becomes false. There can be other ways out of a loop other than the test condition becoming false. And I'll mention it now so that when we see it again, it'll make sense. If you have something like this, while it's doing something, then do some stuff here, blah, 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 inside some braces. You can use what's known as a break statement. The break statement gets it out of the loop, causes it to jump to the next statement following the loop. That's one way. The other is you could just put a return there. A return causes it to exit the function right then and there. That's another way to exit the loop, even if it looks logically like it's an infinite loop. The easiest way to write an infinite loop is to do this, while true, right? There's absolutely no way this condition could ever become false. We've hard-coded it to be true. But then there might be a break in there, or a return. And that's not an invalid way of coding, but the books will never show it to you. It's my favorite way of writing certain loops, but the books don't show it. Can't say that my way is stupid. I think it's pretty clear, but books never show it. Anyways, so what I would, we'll get to that. We're not even on a chapter that's really specifically focused on loops. Supposedly we're still talking about pseudocode. So your loops had better change the variable that the test condition is based on. Or there better be a break in there or a return to cause it to get out of it. Otherwise it is an infinite loop. So tracing, what is tracing? Tracing is when you step through the program by hand. Rather than entering a debugger, you just sit there with pen and paper, pencil and paper, maybe in some graph paper or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever, and track the values of it. And this is almost tedious to do. Let's say I write a program like this. X is equal to 1. While X is less than 10, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make it 3 so that it doesn't take very long to trace it. While X is equal to 3, Y is equal to X times X. And then print Y. And then we better change the loop variable, or else it would never stop. And again, print is not the right word. It's just easier for me to type than system.out.println. Alrighty, so what we would need to do, and I don't know if all of y'all are going to be able to see this or if the glare is going to be too much, is set up a little table. We only have 2 variables going on here. So I'd set up an X and a Y. And maybe we could number the lines. This is line number 1, that's line number 2, that's line number 3, that's line number 4, and that's line number 5. So line number, then the value of X, and then the number of Y. So after line number 1, X is set to 1. Line number 2, nothing changes. Line number 3, Y gets set. X is unchanged, but Y is set. And so X times X is 1, so Y is now that. Line number 4, nothing changes. Line number 5, X changes. And then go back to top. So we're at line number 2 again. You can say either 2 or 3. At line number 3, Y changes. It was 1, but now 2 times 2 is 4. And then line number 4, nothing changes. Line number 5, X changes, it becomes 3. You see what I'm doing, right? You're tracing it by hand. You're stepping through it, noting what happens to the variables to make sure that your logic is what you think it's supposed to be. Most people nowadays would just load it up in a debugger and step through it. Watch what the variables were doing inside the debugger. I don't know that professionally I ever sat down and did it like this. I did do this for some programming assignments I had in computer science classes when we were writing an assembly simulator and we needed to make sure that our logic worked before we implemented it. But I never did it in professional programming. That doesn't mean, has anybody done that in professional programming, done pencil and paper?
Yes.
All right.
Well, spreadsheet, I have some.
Yeah, a spreadsheet set up. Yeah. So, it's very plausible you would need to do that. Never again will I say, I've never done that. I'll just act like it's a standard matter, of course, and then if they never do it, then great. Alrighty. So that's tracing. If there is input, provide a column called input, right, so that we could write down the input that the user entered at that point. And then another column for every variable, and then another column called output. I forgot to put an output column. Every print statement should have put something in my output column. And then anytime something changes, we write the new value there. Anytime there's a print statement, you put that in the output column. For full credit on the homework, we don't have any homework based on this. All right, so pseudocode summary. If we were going to do pseudocode according to this book, instead of an equal sign, we would use an arrow. In order to get input, we would use the word input. How do they show how to do the output? Do they use the word display or print or output? Yeah, they use the word print for output. I'm not going to ask you these things. Loop termination. There are 3 ways to terminate a loop. Basically, you can have a counter loop that's just going to go from 1 to 100 like my loops have been doing. Or a user query. Ask the user if he wants to continue. Right? You run the program, and then when it's done, it says, do you wish to repeat? And if you choose yeah, it does it again. That's called user query. And then the third way is known as Sentinel Value. The Sentinel Value is a special value. That's not valid data. It instead indicates that the program is supposed to stop. Something like that would be enter test score or -1 to exit. And hopefully your professor will never give you a -1. Right. So that -1 would be the Sentinel value telling it the loop should exit. And let's code a couple of examples of, let's code an example of all 3 of these. So I'm going to start up Netbeans. If y'all want to play along, that'd be cool. And we're just going to use while loops, not going to use do loops. Maybe later we'll find a reason to use a do loop. But actually, do loops are perfect for user queries. Maybe we'll implement it as a user query. Maybe not. We can do anything you can do with a while loop. With a do loop, you can do with a while loop, but it may require an extra if. We'll see how that goes. So new project, Java application, next, Lecture D, finish. All right. I'm going to scroll down to here where it says to do code application logic here. All right. What did the book call the first style? The book called it a counter loop. Example of a counter loop. You use a counter variable to keep track of the number of iterations. In the real world, you might use a for loop rather than a while loop in order to manage your counter. It'd probably be the case. So we're going to need a counter variable. Int counter is equal to 1. Alrighty. And while x is less than or equal to 10, what are we going to do? We're going to print out 1 divided by that number, right? So 1 divided by 1 is 1, 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. So when we see the output, it should say 1, 0.5, 0.333, 0.25, and so on. And here I called it x, and here I called it counter. Why don't I change this to x? Make it easier for me to type on. Okay. So let's calculate our output variable. But I'm going to make it a float. Actually, I'm going to make it a double. Double D, or double result, is equal to 1.0 divided by x. Now there's a reason I made it 1.0 rather than just 1, which we'll talk about later. I want to avoid integer division, which always rounds down to 0. And then let's print this out. System.out.printf one divided by %d equals %f \n end quote, comma, and I'm going to put this stuff on the next line, but you don't have to. I'm just running out of space. And so we divided it by x and we got a result. And if I ran it at this point, it would just keep looping x is equal to 1 forever because I have not changed the value of the counter. So x plus plus, increase it by 1. Alright, I'm going to run it, see if it works. So I ran it, well I built it. I run it and it says, okay, 1 divided by 1 is 1, 1 divided by 2 is 0.5, 1 divided by 3 is 0.333. You'd probably like %d to mean double, but it means integer. I wish %i meant integer and %d meant double, but I didn't make this up in 1970 when that syntax was made up. And so you use %d for ints, you use %f for floating point types, regardless of whether it's a float or a double. That's almost worth making a comment about. Printf. %f is used for floats and doubles. %d is used for ints and longs. %s is for strings. And there are other specialty ones, like if you want to print out a hexadecimal number, I believe it's %x. If you want it, force it to be in scientific notation, I'm sure there's another one still, but I'm going to leave it at that. All right, that's our counter loop example. Now we're going to do a user query loop. The way the user query is going to work is it's just going to ask for a number, and it's going to do the same calculation. But it's not going to print them all out 1 to 10. It's going to use input. Now since we are asking for input, we're going to need a scanner. So scanner in is equal to new scanner, just accept on faith that this syntax works. At a certain point we'll understand exactly what it's doing. But we're getting an error because we never imported our scanner class. So we're going to click on the little red error, be lazy, and do add import for java.util.scanner. Now if we were roughing it, we'd scroll up to the top and do add, import space java.util.scanner or java.util.star to bring in everything in that library. But I'm going to let Netbeans do it. And I emphasized this last time, but I'm going to emphasize it again. Never choose create until you absolutely know what you're doing. And at this point, we have no reason to ever choose create. If you don't see an import statement, it means that you made a typo. All right, add import. If I scroll up to the top, I'll see import java.util.scanner. Now, why do we need that? Because for user query, and for the other part that I'm going to add, which is where we ask for a number, we need the ability to read input from the keyboard. Okay, so we need some kind of variable that's going to indicate whether they wish to continue or not. Now I can't use the word continue because that's a specific keyword. But I could call it run again or repeat. How about repeat? Int repeat is equal to 1. And then while repeat equals 1. It'd be cooler to write, to make it, either some kind of string, like quote y, or to make it a Boolean, but I'm going to try to make this example as simple as possible. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask them for a value, and then we're going to perform our calculation, the same calculation we did here, and then we're going to ask them if they want to do it again. So let's ask them for the value. Ask user for a number to divide by. So system.out.println. I believe the Eclipse editor, one of them just lets you type SOP and it expands it out to that. That sure would be nice. System.out.print or println. If I do print, it'll not skip to the next line, so I'm going to do that. System.out.print, enter number to divide by. What's it called when you flip a number like that? 1 over x. That's the inversion?
Reciprocal.
Yeah, the reciprocal. But that wouldn't make this question easier to write, so I'm going to leave that. Okay, and then we need to get the input. X is equal to in dot next int, because it's an integer. You know what? Why don't we make that a double so that they can type in 1.5? Maybe they want to divide 1. So what I'm going to do to make this a double is I'm going to change that int to the word double, and I'm going to change that word int to the word double. We have 2 places to change. I've learned through bitter experience when I jump up and I start making changes in earlier lines of code that 10% of the class does not catch it. But our class is so small that I'm willing to risk that. Why am I getting an error there? Maybe I just need to save it. I need to Oh, I made repeat a double, and that should not be a double. You're right. Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say. I'm storing it in x, which I declared way up at the top as an int, right? So instead, I'm going to do this double y, right? I need some value, some variable to store it in. I should have declared that variable perhaps above the loop, so I could document it. That would have been a better thing to do. Is after int repeat is equal to y, let's do double y. We don't even need to give it a starting value. Then we're going to call this value to divide by. And loop until repeat not equal to 1.
Your double is still.
And I've doubly defined it. Some languages would let you do that. C would.
C++ would do it?
Yep.
Wait, C++ really?
Yeah. And what it would do is this value would hide this variable until it exited the loop. So any changes made to y inside these braces would not affect its initial value. Weird. I don't mind that Java doesn't allow that. Yeah. Okay. All right, we've got its value. Now let's calculate its reciprocal. Result is equal to 1.0 divided by y. And what? Oh, I declared double right in the equation. So double result is equal to 1.0 divided by y. And then I'm going to go steal that print statement and paste it down here. So I'm going to scroll back up to my previous loop, steal that statement, but I'm going to have to change that x to a y. Honestly, what I should have done is just changed x to a float way up at the very top so that I could repeat it. Okay, so I'm copying that print statement, I'm pasting it, and I'm changing that x to a y. Now, that's great, but it'll run forever. I've provided no way of getting it out because the repeat variable never changes its value. And by the way, there are jobs where you pay two people to sit at the same computer for this exact reason. So he could be pointing out I've defined the variable twice. All right, so enter the number to divide by, 10. Oh, well, what do you know? What did I do wrong? Print integer. Oh. This error is in the printf statement. Take a guess at what I did wrong based on this error message. Format specifier print integer fail conversion. Anybody see it? When I copied and pasted it, I needed to make another change. What type is Y?
Double, double,
What does %d mean?
long,
Int or long, right. So I need to make that an F as well. All right.
D stands for long.
That makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Blame the C programmers.
Does L have a value or no?
We could try it. I wonder what L, well,
You
yeah, let's find
can't.
out.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to work.
Well, I mean, would the error tell you what
Yes,
L
I'll give you
is?
an error.
If I type in bad data, that's going to break the loop. It's going to fail with an exception. Okay.
What do you mean by that?
Alrighty. Unknown format exception.
Unknown format,
Yeah.
excellent.
So if we typed in a mismatch, it'll try to tell us that, but if we type in a bad one, it'll tell us that as well. All right, going to go back to this. %f is equal to %f. Now, I got a fancy looking ugly error message when I typed in bad data, if I typed in a non-numeric value. Please enter number to divide by. No, you can't make me. All right, and it blows up. This is called an exception. Exception in thread java.util input mismatch exception. Another term for it is runtime error. But not only is it a runtime error, it's a runtime error that has set up a specific state that Java could capture and examine and handle. Now, we don't have that code for capturing it, examining it, and handling it. It's called a catch. A catch statement would do that. But we'll learn how to handle exceptions at a later point. To make your programs bulletproof, you want to handle exceptions, actually, so that if the user types in some silly value like that, you warn them that was bad. Because in some ways, it's almost impossible to test for all the mistakes that the user can make. Like, what if you test, I'm not going to even go into that. Alrighty, what's the last thing I need to do is, since this is a user query loop, we need to ask them if they want to repeat. System.out.print repeat question mark 1 equals yes, 2 equals no, colon space end quote in parentheses. Now that's enough. No, it's not. We haven't read the answer in. We need to use a scanner call again. Now the repeat variable is an int, so we're not going to use next double, we're going to use next int. Repeat equals in.next int. And I named this variable in just on a whim, right? Variable names don't matter to the computer. They just matter to us. Could have called it input, but in is easier to type. All right, I think the program is going to run now. And I believe that it's going to have all the functionality that I hoped for. which is to loop until the user decides to make it stop. Enter number to divide by, 10. Do I wish to repeat? Sure do. Enter number to divide by, 5. Do you wish to repeat? No. Build successful. I mean, it says that's an odd thing for it to spit out at the end, but it ran. The run was successful. Okay, that's the second type of loop. They mentioned a third type, the Sentinel value. That's when you use a special value. A special value that is not valid for the program but can be checked for to indicate that we should stop. So, in this case, maybe we're going to ask for a value to divide by, but we don't want to let them divide by 0. Maybe that's an invalid value. If we were doing integer division, divide by 0 would generate an exception. It would cause the program to crash. So that seems like a good idea to me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to use y as the value for the input, but I'm going to set it equal to a non-zero value to begin with. And then I'm going to note that our Sentinel value is 0. And so while y is not equal to 0, do some stuff. Specifically, do these lines right here. Easiest thing to do would be to copy and paste those things. So from the system.out.print all the way to the printf statement here, copy those and then paste them and make that the body of the loop. But we're going to have to make another change. Undo your copy paste. System.out.println. Enter number to divide by or 0 to exit. Colon, space, end quote, end parentheses. Now we better get our value. Y is equal to in.next double. Now let's check. As long as they did not type in a 0, we want to perform our good stuff. If y is not equal to 0, open brace, now I could copy 2 lines of code and paste them successfully. But whatever. Result is equal to 1.0 divided by y, and I am going to go and copy that printf statement. Excuse me, double result is equal to 1.0, not 1 divided by 0. Sorry about that mistake. 1.0 divided by y, and then we need to print it out. I'm going to grab this printf right here, 1 divided by f is equal to f, that one, and I'm going to paste it underneath this one. I'll probably need to tab it over a little bit. That ought to be enough. I think it's going to run successfully. Not 100% sure, but I'm 80. Alrighty, enter number to divide by 4. Do you wish to repeat? No. Then it asks again, enter number to divide by or 0 to exit. Okay, 6. That worked. It gave me an answer. 72. That worked. 0 to exit. I could have made the Sentinel value anything that I was not expecting them to enter. Negative 9999999. I could have made this input a string and then compared, right? So enter a number to divide or Q to quit. That would probably be a better way to do it, but then we would have to convert that string to a digit in order to do the math. And also the comparison for strings is not as easy as you would hope. I will explain what I meant by that as soon as I make sure everybody's got this up. I hope you see that the first one's just a simple counter, that the second one is a user query because we're asking them if they want to repeat, and the third one is a Sentinel value because we've set aside a specific value that indicates it's supposed to stop if they ever enter that. Now, a Sentinel value doesn't just have to be something the user types in. An end of file marker is considered a Sentinel value, right? Because it's something that comes in that can't be processed. Or, you know, you have a sensor and it's supposed to be returning temperatures. If it ever returns something other than a temperature, or maybe a impossible temperature like -999, then you know that the sensor is broken. Alrighty. I tried to comment this well, but I didn't comment it as nicely as I wish I had. Like x equals 1, that's a counter. Okay. I'll put these all in the notes. Anything else I want to do with this? Yeah, I want to mention an idea, but I don't think we're going to have time to actually execute this idea adequately. One thing that I might want to do, or that I might not, would be to move all the variable declarations up above the code. I might want to move this scanner up. So I'm going to cut that scanner and paste it up here. And then later on, I had a couple more, and I could cut those and paste it up. I think it's nice to have the scanner up at the top. But okay, that's enough of that. What I would like the program to do, and we're not going to implement it, is to ask which operation you want to do. And so I would do something like this. Now it's not going to actually work. We're not going to put the if statements necessary to get it to work. So 1 for counting loop, comma, 2 for user query loop, comma, 3 for Sentinel value loop, comma, or 0 to exit, or -1 to exit, whatever. And then I would like to read that into a variable, maybe something called choice, and then do this code conditionally based on what they chose. Right? If they chose 1, we do the first chunk of code. If they chose 2, we do the second. If they chose 3, we do the third. Now, one of the upcoming homework assignments has you do that. This is a menu-based program where you're triggering behavior based on what menu option they choose. But since we're not implementing it, I guess it wouldn't be that hard, but no, I don't want to do that right now. It would just print that message and then not actually abide by it, right? So when I run it, up at the top it says 1 for counting loop, 2 for user query, 3 for Sentinel, and then it goes on its merry way, right, rather than asking for input. So I'm going to comment that out and add a comment to do, make this a menu-based program. To make it a menu-based program, we probably would wind up defining variables in more than one place. Or if I had done what I suggested and move all the declarations up to the top, maybe we wouldn't have to do that. Maybe it would be pretty easy. Maybe we'll do that next Tuesday. All right, any syntax errors? Are we all good? I think we're good. All righty. So user query example, enter distance in miles. The equivalent distance in kilometers is that. Print continue, y in. Keep running while continue equals y. This is a good point. You cannot compare strings like this. If s is a string, you cannot do this. Or if s and y, if s is equal to no. Something like that. That will not work. If s and t are strings, you cannot do this. And you could in Python. You can in C++ if s is equal to t. Because in Java, this is not comparing the values. It's doing a comparing of the references to see if they have the same address, which seems silly, but that's the case because strings are actually objects in this language. They're not primitive values. So what you got to do is this. If s dot equals parentheses, quote, in, like that. Or if s dot equals, quote, no quote, because like that. There's also equals ignore case. So you could do this. If s dot equals ignore case, pass in t. And that way, you know, if one of them was an uppercase letter and one of them was a lowercase letter. I swear it's going to get one of y'all that you try to compare two strings using equal equal. But you can't because they are objects. And if you've done C++ programming and you've heard the term operator overloading, which would let you do this, Java does not support operator overloads. I think that's about enough lecture for today. Are there any questions? I should just sit here and make y'all wait until somebody asks a question. Well, we're not going to do that. Yeah. But let's talk about the homework. I don't see the homework. Let's go into the homework folder and spot it. I'm going to go ahead and copy both homework assignments in. So if you feel inspired, you can try to do both 3 and 4. But 3 is the one that's due next week. All right, so counting loops. We're doing this way earlier than we should because the textbook is not actually covering counting, but we are in this class, right? So hopefully we can do it. If you need help, you can go to the future chapter about looping. So download it, see what it's supposed to do. All right, assignment 3. I am not a happy panda because I think I overwrote the homework assignment and that both of them have the same contents. Yep. Okay, I'll tell you what it's supposed to do, and then I'll go and find the document and I'll upload it. It's supposed to do 4 different things. Assignment 4 was supposed to be to make it a menu-based program. Really? Yep. He's lost. Dadgummit. Okay. So anyways, going back to the other one. That will teach me to make new homework assignments for y'all rather than just reuse the ones I've used for 10 years. Okay, count to x. The way this is supposed to work is it asks for x and then it displays the numbers from 1 to x. So if you type in 25, it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way to 25. Count down to x. Should be count down from x. You enter 10, it goes 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Count from x to y. You enter 10 and then 25, it'll go 10 all the way to 25. It'd be really cool, see if you can do this, to where if they made y less than x, it would also count down, right? So if they enter 1 and 10, it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But if they enter 10 and 1, it'd go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hope I said that right. 1 through 10 or 10 through 1. And then lastly, print square values. So that you ask for x and it'll print all the squares from 1 to x. So 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, and so on. I will upload that by tonight. Does that make sense before you see the instructions? Hope so. It'll be clear after you read the instructions. If it doesn't make sense after you read the instructions, of course, ask me. Text me something and I can even record a 2-minute lecture explaining it further. Alrighty. Did I make a Dropbox? No, everybody's still waiting for me to do that. All right, click on assignments so that you can give me your .python program or any notes that you took, or at least a file saying that you were here. And I will see y'all on Tuesday. Remember, no class for those who have Monday classes.
Did you make it?
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
It's in the homework. It's not in the same category as.
Yeah, that's great.